Scrawny Steve Rogers wants to fight in World War II. Luckily, the government's Strategic Scientific Reserve agent Peggy Carter and engineer Howard Stark inject super soldier serum into him to make him buff, and the government then casts Steve in a series of propaganda shows as Captain America. Eventually, Steve joins the real fight against the Nazi division Hydra, but his friend Bucky dies in combat. Then he falls in love with Peggy. Then Hydra's Johann Schmidt / the Red Skull uses the alien tesseract to make bombs to hit major cities. So Steve ambushes Schmidt's plane, defeats him, then flies the plane into the snow to sacrifice himself for the greater good. And we dig him out of the snow 70 years later and he's alive. Howard Stark's dead, but his son Tony Stark's CEO of Stark Industries, but he gets kidnapped by terrorists and a grenade sends shrapnel into his chest. Luckily, Tony and fellow prisoner Yinsen put an arc reactor in his chest, then they build weaponized armor for Tony to escape, though Yinsen dies. At home, Tony shuts down the weapons department of his weapons company. Obadiah Stane, the company manager, is like WTF. Also, Tony falls for his assistant Pepper Potts. Tony then decides to make a nicer suit with his AI Jarvis. But wait, Stane wants to take over the company. Stane builds his own suit and he and Tony fight. The press then dubs Tony Iron Man. Hey, remember the SSR? Now they're S.H.I.E.L.D. Coulson works there, and director Nick Fury tells Tony he's rounding up superheroes. Tony's been superheroing as Iron Man, but wait, his arc reactor is poisoning him. Oh no. Then Ivan Vanko, Whiplash, shows up in his own weapon suit and attacks. Tony goes Iron Man and arrests Vanko. Fury and Agent Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, come and tell Tony that Howard Stark used to work with Ivan's father until Howard got mad and had him deported. Ouch. Tony then finds his dad's old blueprints for a new element, synthesizes it, puts it in his chest, and now he's not dying. Justin Hammer, Stark Enterprises' main competitor, breaks Ivan Vanko out of prison so he can make suits of armor for the government. Vanko makes the suits, but surprise, they're all rigged to kill Tony, so Tony and Rhodey, in his own War Machine suit, fight them all off and Vanko dies. Remember the super soldier serum? General Ross, his daughter Betty Ross, and her boyfriend Dr. Bruce Banner are all working to recreate it. Then Bruce tests it on himself, and oops, Bruce becomes a giant monster to the Hulk whenever he gets mad. So he becomes a fugitive. Ross finds Bruce and sends Marine Emil Blonsky and his team after him. But Bruce goes Hulk and evades them. Then Bruce reunites with Betty, but then Blonsky and Ross detain him. But then Blonsky, power hungry, demands to be injected with Bruce's blood. This transforms him into a giant beast, the Abomination. He and Hulk fight, Hulk wins, then Bruce flees. Then Tony tells Ross he's trying to assemble a team. Now we're in space. Odin, king of Asgard, names his son Thor the new king, making his brother Loki jealous. Then Thor accidentally starts a war with the Frost Giants, pissing off Odin. He deems Thor unworthy of his hammer and banishes him to Earth. There, Thor's taken in by Dr. Jane Foster and Dr. Eric Selvig, and Thor falls for Jane. Loki wants to be king, so he sends the Destroyer to go kill Thor. The Destroyer starts killing people, so Thor tries to sacrifice himself for them. This makes him worthy of the hammer again, and Thor uses it to defeat the Destroyer. Loki brings an assassin to kill Odin, but plans on gaining Odin's approval by saving him. Odin awakens, and when Loki sees he still does not favor him, he allows himself to fall into space. Selvig researches the Tesseract with Fury, Commander Maria Hill, Natasha, Coulson, and Clint Barton Hawkeye, when Loki hypnotizes Selvig and Clint and steals the Tesseract. So Fury assembles the Avengers and brings Bruce, Tony, and Steve together. Then Steve, Tony, and Natasha capture Loki, but Thor crashes in to placate his brother. Loki and hypnotized Clint attack and Loki kills Coulson. Then Loki opens a portal and summons an army of aliens. The Avengers all fight the army. However, the World Security Council decides to send a nuke to New York, WTF, but Tony uses the missile to kill all the aliens. Thor returns Loki and the Tesseract to Asgard. Elsewhere, Thanos learns of Loki's failure, but has another plan. Tony has PTSD after New York and has a strained relationship with Pepper. Meanwhile, a terrorist called the Mandarin bombs the country, so Tony decides to act. Then the Mandarin bombs Tony's house. Tony discovers that the Mandarin's bombings actually come from the Extremist program, an experimental soldier treatment making people explode. Tony tracks down the Mandarin but is shocked to learn he's only an actor. The real Mandarin is Aldrich Killian, a scientist Tony humiliated in the past. Killian then subjects Pepper to extremists, but she survives. Then Killian kidnaps US President Ellis so he can control the country. Then Tony, Rhodey, and a fleet of Iron Man suits come in and save everyone. Dr. Jane Foster is infected by something called the Ether. Odin says it may kill her and explains that it is the powerful weapon of the Dark Elves, led by Malekith. Then Malekith storms Asgard to get the Ether from Jane and kills Thor's mother Frigga. Thor then breaks Loki out of prison for help. Malekith takes the Ether out of Jane, battles with Thor and Loki, and kills Loki. Thor mourns Loki's death, then he and Jane return to Earth. Malekith uses portals to try and infect all the 9 realms with the Ether, but Thor, Jane, and Selvig battle and eventually kill him. But unbeknownst to Thor, we see that Loki has faked his own death and is now ruling Asgard while disguised as Odin. Gasp. Fury learns S.H.I.E.L.D. has been compromised, but is immediately killed by the Winter Soldier. Gasp. Then S.H.I.E.L.D. labels Steve a fugitive, and he and Natasha discover, to their horror, that Hydra has secretly infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and their leader, Alexander Pierce, plans to kill hundreds via Project Insight. Gasp. So Natasha and Steve team with Sam Wilson, the Falcon, to fight the Winter Soldier. But this time Steve recognizes the attacker as his old friend Bucky Barnes. We learn that Hydra revived and brainwashed him. Then, surprise, Agent Maria Hill reveals that Fury is actually alive. With his help, Natasha kills Pierce, while Steve, Maria, and Sam destroy Project Insight. Peter Quill, Star-Lord, steals a magical orb for Yondu. Ronan also wants it. Ronan gets his boss Thanos to send his daughter Gamora after Peter. Gamora fights Peter while Rocket and Groot try to capture Peter for the bounty, and then they all get arrested. In prison, Drax tries to kill Gamora because Ronan killed Drax's family, but Gamora reveals that she's against Ronan, so she, Peter, Drax, Rocket, and Groot break out together to sell the orb, but then Ronan comes, attacks everything, and steals the orb. But then Ronan and Gamora's sister Nebula attack Xandar. Peter and company decide they have to stop this. In the ensuing battle, Groot shields his friends and dies, but then Peter and company grab the orb and use it to kill Ronan. Then a small Groot plant begins to regrow. Peter, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Baby Groot are hired to fight for the Sovereign's Aisha. But when Rocket robs them, Aisha sends her army against them. But then, Ego saves the Guardians. Ego reveals that he's Peter's father and a celestial god. Meanwhile, Yondu's crew mutiny and imprison him along with capturing Rocket and Groot. But Yondu and Rocket bond, then escape with Kraglин's help. Meanwhile, Ego teaches Peter to use his inherited celestial powers. But then Ego reveals that he intends to take over all the world, and also he killed Peter's mother. Furious, Peter kills his father with the help of the Guardians, Yondu dies, and Peter realizes that Yondu was his true daddy. Tony, Steve, Thor, Bruce, Natasha, and Clint fight Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, superpowered twins. Back home, Tony creates the Ultron AI to protect the Earth, but then Ultron decides to save humanity, he must end it, and allies with Pietro and Wanda. Thor then meets with Selvig and learns that Infinity Stones are a threat they must soon face. Meanwhile, the Avengers plus Fury crash at Clint's house. Then, Ultron uses vibranium to make a new body. But then the twins betray Ultron and help deliver the synthetic body to the Avengers. Then Tony helps put Jarvis and the Infinity Stone inside Loki's scepter into the body, thus creating Vision, who agrees to help. Then the Avengers fight and defeat Ultron, but in the process Pietro dies. Years ago, S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist Hank Pym creates the Ant-Man suit, allowing the wearer to shrink to the size of an ant and control ants. But then he resigns from S.H.I.E.L.D. to hide it from the government. In the present, Pym is horrified to see that his rival Darren Cross has made a similar suit called the Yellow Jacket. Meanwhile, burglar Scott Lang robs Hank Pym's mansion only to find the Ant-Man suit. Hank then confronts Scott and tells him he wants Scott to become Ant-Man and steal the Yellow Jacket from Cross. Hank's daughter Hope trains Scott to use the suit. Then, meanwhile, Cross tries to sell the Yellow Jacket to Hydra, but then Scott interrupts. Cross and Scott fight, Cross dies, but then Scott falls into the quantum realm. However, he is able to return when he hears his daughter's voice. Ross, who's now Secretary of State, presents the Avengers with the Sokovia Accords to put them under UN oversight. Tony agrees with the measure, but Steve doesn't. Then, a bomb kills King T'Chaka of Wakanda, and the killer appears to be Bucky. So T'Challa, T'Chaka's son, and also the warrior Black Panther, hunts Bucky. Steve and Bucky finally reconcile. Bucky reveals that he's being framed by Zemo. Steve then recruits Clint and Wanda while Sam calls in Scott. Meanwhile, Ross commissions Tony, Natasha, T'Challa, Vision, and Rhodey to arrest Steve. Tony also brings Peter Parker, Spider-Man. The two teams clash, then Zemo reveals that a brainwashed Bucky killed Tony's parents. Tony, enraged, fights Steve and Bucky, but Steve and Bucky beat him and escape. T'Challa returns to Wakanda to take on the Mantle of King. What's Wakanda? Just some third world country that secretly has an endless supply of vibranium metal and is the most technologically advanced nation in the world. Meanwhile, Eric Killmonger and Ulysses Klaue sell stolen vibranium. But then T'Challa and the CIA's Everett Ross stop them. In the past, T'Challa's uncle, N'Jobu, wanted to use Wakandan weapons to help oppressed African descendants. T'Chaka disagreed and killed him, orphaning N'Jobu's son, Eric. In the present, Eric kills Klaue, then comes to Wakanda and kills T'Challa. Gasp! Then Eric assumes the throne. Surprise, T'Challa is not dead thanks to M'Baku and the wild Jabari tribe. Now T'Challa, the head of his guard Okoye, his lover Nakia, his sister Shuri, Ross, and the Jabari all confront Eric. T'Challa stabs Eric, then T'Challa, moved by Eric's belief that Wakanda should be helping others, reveals Wakanda's true nature to the world. After the Battle of New York, salvage worker Adrian Toombs is excited for the new work, but then the Department of Damage Control takes the job from them. Angry, Adrian decides to build himself a flying suit called the Vulture and sell alien weapons. In the present, Peter continues his work as Spider-Man, but is desperate to rejoin the Avengers. Peter confronts Adrian several times and accidentally causes a ferry incident endangering many lives. Disheartened, Peter goes to the homecoming dance with Liz, only to discover that her father is Adrian. Peter springs back into action with the help of his friend Ned and successfully defeats Adrian. Tony, impressed, offers Peter a place in the Avengers. However, Peter declines to focus on his own life. Dr. Stephen Strange suddenly breaks his hands in a car accident. Desperate for a cure, he travels to Kamartaj for help. He meets Mordo, Wong, and the Ancient One. Quickly, Stephen trains under them, regains control of his hands, and even learns to use the Eye of Agamotto, which can control time. Then Caecilius attacks and reveals that the Ancient One lives so long because she uses power from the evil Dormammu. Gasp. Caecilius seeks to bring Dormammu to Earth to make everyone immortal, but he doesn't realize that Dormammu will actually just destroy everything. After the Ancient One dies, Stephen confronts Dormammu and uses the Eye to lock him in an endless time loop. Desperate for release, Dormammu agrees to leave Earth and kill Caecilius. Loki has tricked his way into ruling Asgard, but Thor cuts through the sham and, with Doctor Strange's help, finds Odin, who warns that their evil sister Hela is coming. Then Odin dies. Hela arrives, destroys Thor's hammer, casts Loki and Thor off to space, and conquers Asgard. Thor lands in Sakaar, is captured by Valkyrie, and then forced by the Grandmaster to battle the planet's greatest warrior. But the warrior turns out to be Hulk, and the two reunite. Then Valkyrie switches sides, and she, with Thor, Hulk, and Loki, successfully escape back to Asgard. There, they decide they must initiate Ragnarok and destroy Asgard in order to stop Hela. Hela dies, Asgard explodes, and Thor loses an eye. But all of Asgard escapes safely on a massive ship. Thanos seeks the 6 Infinity Stones in order to kill half the universe and curb overpopulation. Power Stone acquired, Thanos invades the Asgardians, steals the Space Stone, and kills Heimdall and Loki. Gasp. Then Bruce, Strange, Wong, Tony, and Peter fight Thanos' children. Then Thor unites with Groot, Rocket, and Aitri to forge a new hammer. Meanwhile, Peter, Gamora, Drax, and Mantis battle Thanos, but he defeats them and takes the Reality Stone. The Red Skull then explains that Thanos must sacrifice someone he loves for the Soul Stone. So, heartbroken, Thanos kills Gamora for the stone. Then Nebula, Strange, Tony, Peter, Mantis, and Drax battle Thanos, but he defeats them and takes the Time Stone. Then in in Wakanda, Thanos' army fights Steve, Bucky, T'Challa, Sam, Rhodey, Wanda, Vision, Shuri, Okoye, M'Baku, Natasha, Bruce, Thor, Groot, and Rocket. But Thanos prevails, takes the Mind Stone, and snaps. Half the universe dies, including Bucky, T'Challa, Groot, Wanda, Sam, Fury, Maria, Mantis, Drax, Peter, Strange, and Peter. Good lord. A pretty common criticism is, oh my god, there's no real stakes because, you know, everyone that dies in the snapping, they're obviously going to come back in the end. Which, yeah, I know a lot of the characters that, you know, faded into dust will of course be getting sequels, but that doesn't mean this film didn't have stakes, because their sacrifice still held severe emotional weight. But you don't want to hear me blabbering on about that. Instead, you can read about it. I wrote an article in Forbes explaining my entire defense of why Infinity War has stakes, and you can check it out in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and like, share, and subscribe for more, and let me know what else you want me to summarize. Thanks.